Hello there, good afternoon. Lovely, thank you.
Hello, beautiful bookworms. Squirrelly Nerdy Jess here, and welcome to another literary destination vlog. My husband and I are National Trust members here in the UK, and a while back we did a little trip around several properties as a long weekend getaway. Among the properties we visited on this particular trip was the home of English author Rudyard Kipling. So come along as I share with you what I learned about this famous author. Bateman's, a 17th century house which became the sanctuary to Rudyard Kipling when he had grown weary of his fame. Kipling was born in Bombay in British India in 1865 and lived there until he was 5, when he and his sister were sent to the United Kingdom to live with a couple who boarded children of British nationals living abroad, as was the custom. But the 6 years spent with that couple were filled with cruelty and neglect, which Kipling recalled in his autobiography as very likely the foundation of his literary life to come, being forced to tell himself stories to survive. When he was 16, he returned to Bombay, the place which would so heavily inspire his work. He worked for several years for local newspapers and published his first books of prose and short stories before moving back to London to be in the literary centre of the British Empire. He continued writing there and married, then moved to the United States for 4 years, during which he wrote copious short stories, poetry, and of course, the Jungle Books. But a combination of growing anti-British sentiment in the States and a family dispute resulting in unwanted publicity left Kipling exhausted. So he and his family packed up and moved back to England. First moving to Torquay in Devon, Kipling was now famous, something with which he was not comfortable. Never really caring for his Devon house, they moved again, this time here, to the Sussex countryside. Originally built in 1634, Bateman's became the Kipling family home in 1902.
Very much the house of an author.
Yes. Kipling intentionally bought remotely in the Sussex countryside, seeking sanctuary from his fame. And as nearby property went up for sale, he'd buy it up to make his estate more and more private, surrounded by the wooded landscape of the Sussex Weald. As a result, he would come to own 300 acres, for which he paid £9,300, equivalent to about £4 million today. He filled the house with oak furniture, Persian rugs, and artifacts reflecting his strong association with India. The rooms today are left much as he left them, a family home that still feels as though the Kiplings have just gone out for the day. Kipling's study was, of course, my favorite room. It was here that Kipling wrote Puck of Pook's Hill and Rewards and Fairies, including the poem If, all directly inspired by the landscape. With his desk scattered with several items, some original belongings, others replicas or other objects of the era. You can so easily picture what his daughter Elsie would later recollect. When writing verse, he usually paced up and down the study, humming to himself. Many Kipling treasures are on display at the house, including this parody of If, written by Kipling's sister and fellow writer Alex Trix Fleming, gifted to him in jest. A necklace commissioned by Kipling's friend Sir Percy Bates, based on Kipling's own illustrations from one of his Just So stories called How the Alphabet Was Made. And even Kipling's Nobel Prize for Literature, which was awarded in 1907. Our visit also answered a question I'd had. In my bookshop, I had seen a number of older Kipling books featuring a swastika in the binding decorations, and while I was aware of its original use in Hinduism as a symbol of good luck, I did always wonder if it became a problem later on. My question was answered here. Kipling had adopted the swastika in the late 1890s, but stopped using it in the early 30s once it became more recognizable as a symbol of the Nazi Party. Here's an example of two Kipling books by the same publisher, one published in 1917 with a swastika on the front and spine, and the other published in 1932 without. Sadly, only one of Kipling's 3 children lived to adulthood. His daughter Josephine, seen at the far left here, died from pneumonia in 1899 on a visit to the US, and his son John was killed in World War I. Their daughter Elsie married and bought elsewhere, so Kipling's wife Caroline left Bateman's with all its furnishings to the National Trust upon her death in 1939. Daughter Elsie also donated all of Kipling's copyrights to the National Trust. Some criticized Kipling's desire for privacy and suggested he led a hermit's existence at Bateman's, particularly after the death of his son. But nothing could be further from the truth. The visitor's book showed a typical year in 1929, including 133 visitors for meals and 40 house guests staying a total of 101 days. Among the ambassadors, artists, politicians, soldiers, writers, sailors, explorers, and more who visited between 1902 and 1935 were President of France, M. Clemenceau, the Bishop of Chichester, General Dunsterville, the inspiration for the character Stocky in Kipling's Stocky & Co., and 28 scouts with their scoutmaster. In the receiving room, the table features plates at each corner with excerpts from those who dined with Kipling: Henry James, H. Rider Haggard, T.E. Lawrence, Ernest Shackleton. The receiving room wall decorations were fascinating. A leather covering made from sewn-together calfskin, covered in tin foil, and then covered with yellow paste and oil-painted. Kipling had these wall coverings imported from another home. Also on display in the garage at Bateman's was one of Kipling's Rolls Royces, a 1928 Phantom Mark I, which he purchased for £2,833, 18 shillings and sixpence. Kipling was a keen early motorist and a pioneer of early motorcars going as far back as 1899. He was, quote, one of those maniacs for whom even the shortest journey was hazardous. Each return to base a triumph. and each policeman a natural enemy. Hilariously though, he never drove himself and was an early advocate of road safety, foreseeing the dangers ahead as the motorcar would become more popular. Kipling also put a keen eye to his garden, enchanting it with an orchard, yew hedges, and a rose garden so that the house could fit into its surroundings like a lovely cup on a matching saucer. As his daughter Elsie recalled, she and her brother John, before his passing, would act out plays in the old quarry, visit the mill by the river, or boat on the lily pond. Events that would find their way into Kipling's writings. After exploring the house and gardens, we had a lovely bite to eat at the cafe, and then left Bateman's in search of one final Kipling-related destination, a statue of Kipling unveiled in 2019 sitting on a bench. I have to admit, I was not all that familiar with Kipling's work aside from the Jungle Books and a few poems before we visited Bateman's, but walking around in the footsteps of an author and seeing the rooms where they worked and the visuals which inspired them always makes me keen to read and discover more. If you have any suggestions for some of Kipling's work you think I should particularly check out, let me know in the comments. A special thank you to all of my current subscribers. And as always, be kind, be curious, be authentic, and effective. Bye!